Have you ever heard of one of your favorite companies getting itself into a bit of a predicament, maybe from a faulty product, a social media scandal, or a freak accident? Did you still like them after how they handled it? This happens more often than you think, especially with larger corporations, since the larger the corporation, the more room for error. Um, with these newsworthy problems in corporations, they require crisis communications. And crisis communications just means the written, verbal, or visual communication between a corporation and its publics before, during, and after a crisis occurs. Crisis communications requires crisis management, which is a process of strategic planning to prevent or lessen the damage that a crisis can do to a corporation or its stakeholders. So, the best practices of crisis communications consists of three phases. The first is pre-crisis, then crisis response, and then post-crisis. And these all come together and contribute to crisis communications going as smoothly as possible and allowing for as much control on the situation as the company can have. So this three-phase method of the best practices of crisis communications provides a tried and true procedure for large corporations to follow to ensure that they successfully deal with the crisis at hand. So to put this into perspective, let's make up a little example. Say you are the CEO of a company that manufactures furniture. To follow the best practices procedure, you would have already created and completed the pre-crisis phase. So this pre-crisis phase would consist of forming a crisis communications team if one already isn't in place, doing a vulnerability audit to see what problems your company could potentially run into, and then creating outlines of plans for those potential problems in the instance that a crisis does occur so that you are completely prepared. The next phase is crisis response, which is basically all about how you and your crisis team handle the crisis at hand. So say that the crisis is that one of the chairs that you manufacture keeps breaking and causing injury to those who have purchased it. Taking from a plan that you would have created a rough outline for in your pre-crisis phase, you would take your first step to respond to the situation, which should be done as soon as possible, but preferably within the first 24 hours. Once all your facts are straight, you could post to your social media platforms, not only just apologizing for the chairs, but also announcing your recall of the chair and assuring your customers that their safety is your top priority. You want to keep the media and your consumers constantly updated throughout this phase to maintain transparency and to also maintain your consumers' trust. You may want to identify a spokesperson, either yourself or someone else on the crisis team, to communicate with the media and the consumers and to also stop any rumors from spreading regarding the crisis. Even when the crisis is over, your work isn't done. This is when you enter the post-crisis phase, and you still want to be continuing to maintain that two-way communication with consumers to fully gain back their trust and loyalty. You also want to assure your stakeholders that while everything is taken care of in the crisis will not be forgotten and that your company has learned from its mistakes. This is also an opportunity to launch a reputation building program or campaign if the crisis did a lot of damage to your company's reputation. Though I know that was a really brief example, I hoped it helped show how the three phases of the best practices of crisis communications in large corporations can provide a proven and dependable path for companies to follow in order to ensure the most success.